The scream never makes it past her teeth, only a ragged rasp that scrapes her throat raw. Elena Montoya lies crooked in the grass south of Neosho, Missouri, skirt torn, skin streaked with dust and blood. The sun sits hard on the Ozarks and burns her shoulders until every breath stings. Flies worry the gash high on her hip where a knife went in. She presses her palm to it and feels the hot slick fight back. She has been running barefoot along fence posts and limestone, and the world keeps tilting in the heat. When her legs give out, she crawls, pulling herself by handfuls of blue stem until a pasture fence cuts a straight line across the mirage. A ranch. Then the light folds. Harlan Pike rides the south field because the vultures turned low and lazy. He expects a calf with fever, maybe a coyote kill. Heat shimmers until the ground looks like glass. What waits in the grass is not a calf. It is a woman, breath faint, dark hair laced with burrs, lips white from thirst, a red bloom spread under her hand. He is off the saddle before the horse is fully still. Knee in the dirt. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her eyes flutter open, iron bright even through the pain. She drags in air that sounds like gravel and forces words through it. "Open it up. Now." He hesitates a half second, then tears the seam. The wound is ugly, a blade cut above the thigh, not a bullet, but deep enough to take her if it keeps pouring. He rips his neckerchief in two. One half presses down, the other knots above her hip to slow the flow. She bites down on the inside of her cheek and takes the hurt like someone who has run out of room to scream. "You'll be all right," he says, and knows it is a promise he can only make with speed. He tips his canteen, pours water to clear blood, and she snaps with a strangled cry, hand shooting to stop him. He holds her wrist, steady, palms up, no threat. "I'm not here to hurt you." For a beat they stare, the sun throwing hard color on everything. Trust is a coin too heavy for this road, but she nods once. He slides an arm under her shoulders and one under the knees and lifts. She weighs like fever and grit. He sets her across the saddle, mounts behind to hold her, and turns the horse toward the cottonwoods that hide his cabin. Hooves drum a flat warning across the field. He feels the old rhythm in his bones, the one that starts in the belly and climbs to the eyes when trouble is near. He glances back. Nothing but sky, heat, and 3 vultures who do not circle without reason. The cabin smells of cedar and old tobacco. He lays her on the cot, pulls a tin bowl, pours water, wipes dust from her face. Her lashes tremble, but her eyes stay shut. He has patched men before, blue and gray both, but not a woman, not like this. He takes a needle from a leather roll left over from the war, heats it in the lamp flame, pours a finger of whiskey over the cut. She tightens like a drawn bow and lets out a sound that is half fury. He talks, low, the way you talk to a skittish horse. "Easy. Breathe. I have you." He crushes yarrow with the back of a spoon, packs the green into the cut to pull the bleed, and starts short stitches. Her fingers find his wrist and clamp. The grip is strong despite the shake. She opens her eyes and the flint in them says more than a paragraph. Safety is not a word she will buy today. He finishes, binds clean cloth over the gash, ties it down with a strip torn from an old shirt. Her pulse evens under his thumb. He sets a tin cup of water where her hand can find it and steps outside. The cicadas scream like hot wire. He scans the fence line, checks the old Spencer carbine that lives by the door, and looks at the track where his horse came in. One set. No tail. For now. When he goes back in, she is awake, eyes on him. He tells her his name. Harlan Pike. She works her voice through the dry. Elena. He nods, like names are a treaty. Outside, afternoon slides toward a dull gold. Inside, A promise begins without either of them saying it out loud. If he rides away now, she will not last a night. He has done that once in a different war, and the dead still visit. He stokes the stove, warms beans, sets a sourdough heel on the iron plate, and when he turns, she is sitting, white-knuckled but upright. "Don't," he says, gentle but firm. She shakes her head. The pain is a tide, but the purpose is ashore. "They took my boy," she says, each word a nail. Mateo. 4. Harlan feels something old turn over in his chest. "Who?" "El que manda las rutas," she says first in Spanish, then makes the English shape slow. "Caleb Ransom." The name scrapes him like flint. He knows the name like he knows a scar under a shirt. Caleb Ransom, once a sergeant with a face that smiled at the wrong things, a man who walked out of Appomattox with pockets light and eyes busy, a man who learned that in peacetime money is a better gun. Ransom runs cattle and freight and paper across 3 counties, buys sheriffs for the price of a new horse, and does not mind blood if it moves a fence line. "How long?" Harlan asks. 3 days, Elena says. "They came to the adobe we rented outside Carthage. Said there was a paper I must sign to sell land that isn't even mine. My husband said no." Her mouth hardens, then breaks. "He is gone. They cut me and left me for the sun. They took Mateo because I would not sign." Harlan keeps his hands busy, because hands that stop will tremble. He tightens the bandage, checks the knot, forces his voice into flat ground. "You saw where?" "They said Baxter Springs. A man who moves children to make families obey." The words are quiet, but they carry teeth. "I followed as far as I could. Then I fell." Harlan takes the Spencer down and checks the spring, then sets it by the door again. "You can stand tomorrow." She lifts her chin the width of a coin. "I can stand tonight." "You can try," he says, and there is no smile in it. They eat in silence. The beans taste like law, necessary and dry. He cuts the heel of bread in half and pushes one to her. She takes it with both hands like a sacrament. When she has enough strength to look up, she studies him. The cabin is spare, tools hung in reach, a worn Union canteen on a peg, a framed scrap of a blue kepi band folded under glass. A life built to be small on purpose. "Why help me?" she asks. He thinks about lying. He does not. "Because there is a kind of quiet that kills a man before winter. I have had too much of it. Night comes without wind. Heat rests heavy on the roof." He sits by the window with the shotgun across his knees and counts heartbeats between cricket songs. Around the 2nd hour, Elena stirs and speaks a single word into the dark. "Mateo." There is a tremor in it that the night cannot hide. Harlan looks at the square of sky and says to nobody, "Fine." Then, "I hear you." At first light, he saddles the mare and a rangy mule with a scarred ear. He wraps food, linen, matches, and a coil of rawhide. Elena binds her wound tight and walks to the yard, barefoot on dust, jaw set. He weighs the cost of arguing and decides to waste no time. He gives her his old Colt Army 1860. The cylinder still turns sweet. She checks it with a competence that lifts one corner of his mouth. They ride north and a little west, keeping to fence lines and creek cuts until the old wire bridge that crosses a shallow branch of Spring River shows through cottonwoods. The bridge is just wide enough for a wagon. Harlan slows and listens. Birds. Water. A horse shakes a bridle somewhere he cannot see. He dismounts. "Wait here." Elena shakes her head. "No." He moves forward, boots soft on boards. A shadow slides under the far bank. The sun pulls another inch above the trees and makes an edge on everything. A man steps out, rifle low, hat down. Another crawls up from gravel. Harlan counts without moving his lips. 2, maybe 3. The first man calls, friendly as a snake. "You Harlan Pike." Harlan does not answer. "We are collecting a toll," the man says. "Caleb Ransom sends regards." The name turns the morning metallic. Harlan lifts the Spencer to shoulder, slow, honest, to give the river and the day a chance to change their minds. They do not. The man grins wider. Elena's voice comes sharp from behind a wagon stump on their side. "Left bank." Harlan drops to a knee. The shot that was meant for his chest takes a breath out of his hat instead. He returns fire, and the near man folds to the boards with his rifle clattering. The second tries for the gravel and catches a round in the thigh. A third, who thought the willow would make him invisible, learns otherwise when Elena's Colt cracks once, measured and clean. The bridge stinks of old wood and fresh powder. Harlan crosses, gun on the wounded man, while Elena watches the trees. "Where?" Harlan says. "South," the man pants. "Baxter Springs." Then Coffeyville. Ransom's wagons change hands there. "Children," Elena says. The man stares at the sky. "I don't ask questions that make the soup taste bad." Harlan looks at Elena and sees the place where mercy stops. He ties the man's leg with his own bandage, because there is no honor in letting something bleed if it can be made to stop, then drags him to the shade and leaves him with a canteen half full. They ride. The day heats fast, bakes the iron of the bits, sets the grass to whispering. Around noon, they cut a fresh wagon track scored deep by heavy wheels and follow it west. Harlan points to the nail spurs in the mud where a blacksmith stung a horse for speed. "They are pushing," Elena answers without looking away from the ruts. "So are we." By late light, the roofs of Carthage show at a distance, and the telegraph lines hum like a swarm. They camp in a sycamore stand a mile shy of town. Harlan brings the mare in tight and feeds small. Elena sleeps in fits, hand on the colt, breath even when it holds. When the moon is up, Harlan takes the little telegraph blank he keeps for a friend he swore he would never need, and writes 6 words he did not plan to write again. "Need eyes. Ransom moves child. Pending. He will send it at dawn, and whatever falls out of that wire, he will shoulder. The night smells like dust and river and the hot side of iron." Somewhere a train bell rings across the dark. It sounds like distance and like time. Harlan thinks about the price of turning away and decides he paid it once already. In the morning, they ride for the wire. Then for Baxter Springs. Then wherever that road bends meanest. Dawn burns low over the Ozark Ridge as Harlan Pike saddles the mare. The air tastes of dust and dew. Elena stands near the porch rail, pale under her bandage, one hand on the post to keep the world still. He ties a small bundle, yarrow, whiskey, and the colt he cleaned through the night. She insists she can ride. He doesn't argue. They leave the cabin when the first crows rise, following the narrow trail toward Carthage, Missouri. The road is hard clay, cut by wagon ruts, and hoof prints turned sharp by sun. They pass burned fences, a sign still pocked with old bullets from a war the land hasn't forgotten. By mid-morning, the bell tower of Carthage peeks above the trees, a pale shape in the haze. Harlan stops outside the town edge. "We go quiet," he says. "Buy what we need, keep to the shade." Elena nods, face hidden under a plain bonnet. The wound pulls when she shifts, but she rides tall. They stable the horses behind a blacksmith's yard, paying a coin to a boy who doesn't ask questions. The Western Union office sits by the square, white paint flaking. Inside, a single operator works the key, pipe clamped in his teeth. Harlan writes in a slow, square hand, to Hollis, Baxter Springs. Need eyes. Ransom moves child. Watch verdigris. He slides it across the counter with a coin. The man reads enough to look uneasy, but sends it without a word. Next, the doctor, a narrow man with iron spectacles. He peels back Elena's bandage, whistles low, and shakes his head. Clean work, but she's still bleeding inside. Keep it dry. Don't ride far. Elena answers through her teeth. We ride far enough. He wraps the wound with fresh muslin, adds a vial of laudanum, and turns to Harlan. If she takes this, half a spoon, no more. It lies to the body. Outside, the town hums soft. Wagons creak, spurs click, and church bells mark the hour. At the general store, Harlan buys carbine rounds, jerky, and coffee. Elena trades her torn skirt for a simple calico. When she reappears, she looks like any farm wife, except for the eyes, still sharp as glass. They eat on the step, bread and cheese shared in silence. Harlan unfolds a handbill nailed to the wall beside them. It lists Caleb Ransom among the freight contractors licensed to move cattle to Coffeyville. His brand mark, a half-sun, burns black across the bottom. He folds it once, slow. He's heading south, he says. Elena's fingers tighten around the crust of bread. Then so do we. They leave town through the Center Creek Trail, where the river curves shallow under limestone banks. The air grows damp, the world smaller. Harlan slows the horses. Something feels wrong, the silence too neat, too practiced. A jay screams once from the far bank. Harlan raises a hand. Stop here. Elena reaches for the colt. You see them? Not yet, he says. But they see us. He dismounts, moving low through grass that smells of iron. A splash of water follows the wind. He grips the Spencer and tilts his head to the current. Then he hears it, the faint clink of a rifle sling brushing rock. Left side, he murmurs. A bullet cracks past his ear, close enough to bite air. Elena fires once toward the echo, and bark explodes from a willow trunk. Harlan rolls to cover, sights down the Spencer, and squeezes. A figure folds into the mud with a sound like a breath leaving. Another man yells and fires back wild, his ball snapping through reeds. Harlan counts 2, maybe 3. He waits for the next move, jaw locked tight. Smoke from the gunpowder drifts slow above the creek. The second man tries to crawl along the far bank, his rifle dragging. Harlan puts a round through the log beside him, close enough to carve splinters into his sleeve. The man freezes. From the willow, Elena fires again, one clean shot. A third gunman breaks and runs through the brush, boots slapping stone. Harlan doesn't chase. He listens until the sound fades into open field. Silence returns, only the creek talking to itself. Harlan crosses knee-deep water, the chill biting through his boots. He finds the wounded man gasping against a root tangle, young, barely 20, skin gray from fear. Harlan lowers his rifle. Who sent you? The boy's breath rattles. Ransom. Said watch the ford. 2 wagons due from Baxter. Switch horses at Coffeyville. Elena steps closer. Children? The boy looks away. Didn't see them. Just boxes, covered tight. Her hand trembles, but she holsters the Colt. Harlan tears a strip from the boy's shirt and ties off the bleeding leg. Tell him we crossed, he says. Tell him we're coming. The boy nods once, too weak to lie. Harlan helps Elena back into the saddle. The creek flashes silver behind them as they ride out of the hollow. Noon light pours over the ridge, hard and white. The road widens ahead, dust rising in slow curls under the hooves. They ride until the land opens flat and dry. The air smells of cattle and salt. A freight wagon passes heading north, driver slumped in the seat, brim low. He tips 2 fingers but doesn't stop. The wagon wheels carry a faint half-sun brand on the hubs. Elena sees it first. His mark, she says. Harlan nods. He's close. By late afternoon, the roofs of Baxter Springs shimmer at the horizon. Telegraph lines follow the road, humming in the heat. Harlan stops where a stand of post oaks shades the trail. They water the horses, share jerky, and rest just long enough to think. She asks quietly, How well did you know him? Harlan watches the wind press the grass. Ransom served under me near Corinth, knew how to dig a trench, knew how to steal a horse. After the war, he found out money was easier to steal than bullets. Elena studies him. And you'll kill him? He looks up. If I must. The words hang between them, honest as iron. They ride again as the sun drops red behind the prairie. Harlan keeps to the wagon shadows where light doesn't carry. The trail curves through cottonwoods, the hum of crickets rising. Baxter Springs flickers ahead, lamps, saloons, and the long whistle of the night train bound for Kansas City. Harlan points to a low ridge before town. We camp there, watch the road. They tether the horses under a live oak, cover the coals, and wait. Far below, 2 wagons roll slow under lantern light, guards at each flank. Canvas covers both beds, edges tied down with new rope. One wagon bears the half-sun, the other, no mark, no lantern. Elena whispers, Mateo. Harlan rests a hand on her shoulder. At first light we follow. She doesn't answer. Her eyes stay fixed on the road until it swallows the last wagon wheel. The prairie wind moves through the grass like breath. Tomorrow, he says, almost to himself, we start taking pieces back. Night drops over Baxter Springs like a burnt curtain. The town hums with freight noise, wagon wheels, laughter, and the iron clatter of spurs on boardwalk planks. Harlan Pike studies the street from the ridge until every lamp burns steady. Then he leads the horses down, quiet as breath, and ties them behind the stockyard fence. Elena follows, her limp smaller now, eyes dark under the brim of a borrowed hat. They move through the edge of town where the smell is half whiskey, half sweat. Saloons leak piano notes into the dust. A sign creaks above the door of the Red Dog Tavern. Harlan nods toward it. Ransom's men drink here, he says. Inside, the air is thick with smoke and the sweet rot of spilled liquor. Drovers crowd the tables, boots up, voices rough from trail dust. A barkeep wipes the same glass over and over without looking up. Harlan takes a corner seat, orders black coffee instead of whiskey. Elena sits beside him, silent, scanning the room. 2 men at the far table wear half-sun pins on their vests. One has a bandaged hand, the kind earned by holding rope too long or fighting a man with more to lose. The other keeps fingering a brass key hanging from his belt. Elena leans close. That key. I saw one like it at our place. It opens a wagon lockbox. Harlan nods once. Then we follow him. The barkeep glances over. You folks passing through? Sevens. Looking for freight work, Harlan says. Headed south to Coffeyville. Plenty of that, the man mutters. Ransom's yard runs near the Telegraph Road. Pays fair if you don't ask what's under the tarp. The 2 men at the far table finish their drinks, step into the street. Harlan drops coins on the counter, stands, and follows. Elena keeps a few steps behind, coat pulled close, hand brushing the colt hidden under her belt. Outside, the night is colder than it should be. The 2 men cross toward the freight depot, lanterns swinging from posts. Harlan and Elena shadow them past the stables and into the dark strip behind the warehouse. The man with the key stops at a side door and fits it into a padlock. The other glances back once. Harlan ducks behind a wagon, finger over his lips. The door creaks open. A faint cry slips through before one of the men curses and slams it shut again. Elena's breath catches. That was a child, she whispers. The sound comes again, short, scared, then gone. Harlan's jaw locks. We go in. Quiet. They wait until the men head toward the tavern again. Harlan pulls his knife, works the door latch slow. The wood groans once, then gives. Inside, lantern light spills over boxes, chains, and feed sacks stacked to the rafters. The air smells of kerosene and hay. In the corner, a small figure lies curled under a blanket. Elena crosses first, dropping to her knees. The boy stirs, blinks, and whispers a name, one that makes her hands shake. Mateo. Harlan's head snaps toward the window. Hoofbeats outside. Voices. Move, he says. Elena lifts the child, clutching him against her chest. They slip out the back, cross the alley toward the livery. Shouts rise behind them. A gunshot cracks through the night, splintering a water trough. Harlan spins, fires once. The man with the key drops, lantern rolling from his hand and shattering on stone. Fire flares, bright and fast. They burst through the back gate, Harlan slashing the rope off their horses. "Ride!" Elena mounts with the boy in her arms. Harlan swings up behind her, spurs hard. They tear through the north road, hooves drumming, smoke chasing them out of town. The fire behind grows smaller, then disappears into the dark. They ride until the lamps of Baxter are only a dull glow behind the hills. Mateo sleeps against Elena's shoulder, his breath thin but steady. Harlan keeps watch, turning in the saddle every mile, listening for pursuit. The moon climbs slow through broken clouds, throwing silver on the trail. When they stop, it's by a dry creek bed north of the Verdigris River. The horses breathe hard, flanks slick with sweat. Harlan builds no fire, only a small lamp hooded by his coat. Elena lays Mateo down, brushing dirt from his hair. He stirs, mumbling in Spanish, then sinks back into sleep. "He's weak," she says softly, "but alive." Harlan nods, pours a little whiskey on a rag to clean a scratch along her arm. "We'll get him to safety first, then ransom." She looks at him, eyes shining in the half-light. "You said he served under you." "Once," he says. "After Corinth, he stole a quartermaster's pay chest. Shot a man who caught him. War let him keep the uniform long enough to run." Elena runs a hand through her son's hair. "He'll keep running unless we stop him." Harlan tightens the cinch on the mare. "Then we stop him at Coffeyville." A night bird cries from the trees. Far off, a wagon rattles on the river road. He waits until the sound fades before speaking again. "The sheriff there's bought. We'll need proof before we walk into town." "What proof?" she asks. "Ledger, letters, anything that ties him to the trade. If Ransom's been paying the law, he's been writing it down. Men like him always do." Elena looks toward the horizon. "Then we steal it." Her voice carries no fear, only the weight of decision. They rest until the first gray line of dawn. Mateo wakes, blinking at the strange light. Harlan offers him dried apple, and the boy chews slow, eyes wide at the stranger's voice. Elena lifts him into the saddle before mounting herself. Harlan leads the mule behind. By midday they reach a ridge overlooking the Verdigris, the river cutting a brown snake through cottonwoods below. Smoke rises from distant camps, drovers, settlers, freight lines. Harlan points. "That bend. Ransom's men cross there. If he's moving more wagons, that's where we'll find them." They ride down through the switchbacks, hooves sliding on red clay. The air grows thick, damp with the smell of river mud. On the far bank, a small camp squats under the trees, 2 wagons, a tethered team, a cook fire. Harlan signals silence. They dismount, leaving the horses tied in shade. From the brush, they watch 3 men move around the wagons. One carries a ledger book, stopping now and then to write. "That's him," Harlan murmurs. "Ransom's clerk." Elena's jaw tightens. We take the book. They wait until the men drift toward the fire. Then they move, low, quick, barefoot over leaves. Harlan reaches the first wagon, climbs onto the step. Inside the open chest, papers lie stacked beside a revolver. He snatches the ledger, tucks it inside his coat, and signals back. A twig snaps. One of the men turns, eyes narrowing. "Hey!" Harlan swings the rifle stock up fast. The man drops. Another shouts. Gunfire rips the quiet open. Elena fires once, covers his retreat. Harlan dives behind a wagon wheel, returns 2 shots, and hears a man fall. The third runs, boots pounding toward the trees. When silence comes again, it's hard and sudden. Harlan checks the bodies, then the book. Inside, neat columns of numbers list payment to Sheriff Walter Hargrove, Coffeyville, enough to bury a man in his own guilt. He hands the ledger to Elena. This is what hangs him. She tucks it close, glancing at her son, then back at him. Then we ride before they send more. They mount as thunder rumbles far west. The smell of rain rides the wind. Harlan turns the horses east toward Coffeyville and the storm waiting there. The rain reaches them halfway to Coffeyville, a thin, steady fall that turns the clay red and slick. Harlan rides ahead, coat pulled high, eyes on the river valley curling below. Elena follows close, Mateo asleep against her chest, his small hands clutching the reins. The air smells of mud and smoke. Thunder rolls slow over the prairie. By dusk, the trail widens into the southern freight road. In the distance, lamps glow faint along the river bend. Harlan halts and points. That's the crossing. Ransom's men guard it. Below, the vertigrous river spreads wide and brown. A rough ferry raft sits moored to a wooden dock, and beside it, a line of wagons waits for daylight. Campfires blink among the cottonwoods, 20 at least. A big outfit. Elena studies the scene. Too many for a fight. Harlan nods. Then we don't fight. We steal what matters. He opens his coat, showing the ledger they took. This says the sheriff here takes his cut from every shipment. If we can get him to sign for payment tonight, we'll have proof he's in it. We walk in like hired help, walk out before sunrise. Elena wipes rain from her brow. And if they know your face, then I won't use it. They wait until dark deepens, then ride down under the storm's cover. The camp smells of wet leather and beans cooking on low fires. Men move lazy under tarps, too tired or too drunk to notice 2 strangers leading horses to the corral. Harlan trades a quick nod with a drover near the fence. New hands, he says low. Sent from Baxter. The man grunts, barely looking up. Talk to Captain Reese. He's by the big tent. They pass rows of wagons, each painted with Ransom's half-sun mark. Near the ferry, a broad man sits at a table under canvas, counting ledgers by lamplight. His hat shadow hides his face, but the star on his vest shines wet. Sheriff Hargrove, Coffeyville Law. Elena feels her heart spike. Harlan steps forward, calm as dust. Hollis sent word. New crew. The sheriff looks up, eyes narrow. Never heard of you. Freight from Baxter. Ransom said to bring this. Harlan slides the ledger forward, open to the payment page. Hargrove reads the entry, thumb tracing his own name. For a second, pride flickers across his face, then suspicion. Where'd you get this book? From the boss himself, Harlan says. Told us to settle your fee tonight, same as always. He drops a pouch of coins on the table. The sheriff hesitates. Greed wins. He reaches for his pen and scrawls his name beside the entry, sealing his own fate in wet ink. Thunder cracks. Harlan closes the book, tucks it under his arm. Appreciate your time, Sheriff. Hargrove looks up, eyes narrowing again. Wait! But Harlan and Elena are already walking away. They move fast through the rows, boots splashing. Elena keeps her hand on Mateo's shoulder inside the wagon tent. Behind them, voices rise, someone realizing the ledger is missing. Time's up, Harlan mutters. They run. A shout cuts through the camp. Stop them. Rifles flash. Bullets hiss through rain. Elena pulls Mateo under her arm and dives behind a wagon. Harlan fires back twice, hitting a lantern post and sending sparks over the mud. He grabs her hand. "To the ferry!" They sprint through the river fog, feet sinking deep. The dock creaks under the weight of their steps. Harlan cuts the mooring rope with his knife and shoves the raft off. The current catches it hard, spinning them downstream. Shots chase the dark, useless against the storm. Elena clutches Mateo close. Harlan pushes the pole against the current, muscles shaking. The river carries them past the camp's fading lights into open black. "Hold him tight," Harlan says. "We made it through the crossing. Now we make it count." By dawn, the rain has stopped. The raft grounds against a sandbar 3 miles south of Coffeyville. Mist hangs thick on the river, silver and still. Harlan pulls the horses ashore one by one, leads them through mud until the bank rises firm. Elena lays Mateo down under a cottonwood tree, wraps him in a blanket, then kneels beside him, too tired to pray. Harlan checks the saddlebag, pulls the ledger free, and opens it to the signed page. The ink has bled a little, but the name remains clear. Sheriff Walter Hargrove. "This will hang him," he says. Elena looks up. "And ransom?" "Once the law's on record, he won't be able to buy it quiet anymore." She stands, brushing mud from her skirt. "Then we take it to Fort Smith." Harlan shakes his head. "Not yet. The sheriff will know we're alive. Ransom won't let that ledger leave Kansas. We need to draw them off first." He glances east where the sky breaks clean. "We'll circle to Independence, lay false tracks north, then cut back across the prairie." They ride through the morning light, wet earth steaming under the hooves. The land flattens, wildflowers bending in the breeze. Harlan's arm throbs from a graze he hasn't mentioned, blood dried stiff under his sleeve. He hides it well, but Elena notices. "You're bleeding," she says. He shrugs. "Keeps me awake." She tears a strip from her skirt, ties it tight around his arm. "You can't protect us if you fall off that horse." He gives a faint smile. "Didn't figure you'd be the lecturing kind." "I wasn't. Until they took my boy." The road ahead glints with wagon ruts half filled by rain. They ride until the sun burns high, then stop near a dry well where the windmill still groans. Mateo sleeps tied against her chest, his breathing shallow but even. Harlan climbs a rise, scanning the far prairie. Dust trails shimmer near the horizon. Riders. 5, maybe 6. Ransom's men. "They found us," he says, sliding down. Elena steadies herself, eyes cold. "Then we make them work for it." They move fast, leading the horses into a patch of broken stone and low brush. Harlan kneels beside a fallen log, checks his cartridges, and looks back at her. "When they get close, I'll draw them left. You take Mateo through that wash and follow the creek east." She shakes her head. "No, I stay." "Elena." "I stay," she repeats. "If they kill you, they'll find us anyway. I won't run." He meets her stare and sees the same fire that kept her alive through everything before this. He nods once. "Then keep low." The riders come fast, shouting, rifles up. The first one crests the ridge and catches a bullet in the chest. Harlan's Spencer kicks once, twice, then smoke fills the air. Elena fires from the rocks, her shots clean and sure. Mateo wakes crying, the sound swallowed by thunder. One man tries to flank right. Harlan nails him through the shoulder. Another horse goes down hard in the mud. The rest wheel back, dragging their wounded. The dust they raise fades quick in the wind. When silence settles, Harlan lowers the rifle and exhales slow. Elena crawls from cover, shaking. Are they gone? For now. He glances at the horizon. They'll come again. But not today. She looks down at Mateo, tears cutting through the dirt on her face. Then we use the day. They bury the dead near the rocks, mark nothing. When it's done, Harlan looks east again. Beyond that ridge lies Indian Territory, and somewhere beyond that, Fort Smith. Justice, if the world still means the word. He reloads the Spencer, wipes his brow, and says quietly, "Next stop, Independence." After that, the hangman's rope. The prairie stretches wide and empty between Independence and the line where Kansas bleeds into Indian Territory. For 2 days they ride under a sky so big it makes silence feel heavy. The wind moves through the grass like an ocean, whispering secrets older than fences. Harlan Pike rides point, hat low, eyes on the trail carved by cattle drives heading south to Fort Sill. Elena keeps to his flank, Mateo asleep in front of her saddle, his small hand tangled in her sleeve. The ledger rides hidden under her coat, the pages already stiff with sweat and dust. By noon, the sun burns white. The land shimmers, dotted with bones of old camps, broken wheels, a rusted cooking pot, a single boot half buried in red clay. Every mile south feels hungrier. They stop at a shallow creek. Harlan kneels to fill the canteen, water brown but cold. "Once we cross the border," he says, "we'll be beyond Kansas law. Means no sheriff can chase us. But it also means no one comes if we fall." Elena crouches beside him, washing her face. "Then we don't fall." He studies her a moment. The wound on her hip has closed, the limp nearly gone, but her eyes hold something harder than before. She's not running anymore. She's hunting. By late afternoon, they reach the first signs of traffic again, a fire pit still warm, a horseshoe print with a notch shaped like a crescent moon. Harlan's mouth tightens. Ransom's men use those shoes. He brands his iron as well as his cattle. Elena glances up. How far? Day, maybe less. They camp on a bluff overlooking the Verdigris tributary, the river shining like a knife under the moon. Harlan builds a small fire shielded by rocks, cooks beans and jerky in a tin pot. Mateo sleeps wrapped in his mother's shawl. He dreams now, Elena says softly. He didn't before. Harlan stirs the pot with the tip of his knife. Kids are tougher than we think. She looks into the flames. You had any? He shakes his head. Just ghosts. The silence that follows feels gentle, not empty. For a moment, the world holds still, the hiss of the fire, the smell of smoke and sage, the endless wind. But far off, under the hum of night, a faint drumbeat of hooves echoes through the valley. Harlan stands, listening. Riders, he says. 5, maybe 6. He kicks dirt over the fire. Pack up. They lead the horses into the trees, hearts pounding with the rhythm of pursuit. Down below, torchlight flickers through the cottonwoods. Men's voices drift on the wind. Elena grips her son tighter. They're close. Harlan shoulders the Spencer, jaw clenched. Too close. We'll move at dawn. Let them think we're ghosts till then. They hide in the dark, wrapped in silence and the smell of rain coming from the south. Morning breaks red. The air tastes of storm and iron. Harlan checks the ridge first. Fresh hoofprints press into the mud above their camp, each facing east. Ransom's men passed in the night, maybe a mile too high to see them. He smiles without humor. Luck still rides with us. They move early, keeping low through ravines and dry creek beds. Clouds gather heavy to the west. The air hums before thunder, thick enough to chew. By noon, they reach the edge of Indian Territory. A wooden marker leans half-buried in grass. U.S. Border 1870 burned into the plank. Beyond it, the land turns wilder, no fences, just mesquite and sagebrush stretching to the horizon. Harlan reins in the mare and looks south. Fort Sill's another day down this line. Supplies, doctor, maybe a friendly face. Elena's voice is flat. And ransom? If he's smart, he'll follow. He wants the ledger back before it reaches a federal judge. She nods once. Then we keep him chasing. They push on. The clouds split mid-afternoon, thunder rolling so close it shakes the ground. Rain comes hard and sudden, cold enough to sting. They find shelter under a shelf of rock. Harlan ties the horses, builds a small fire with damp twigs, and shakes water from his hat. Elena sits with Mateo between them, feeding him crumbs of hardtack softened in water. The boy smiles faintly. It's the first time Harlan's seen it. You think he remembers his father? She asks quietly. Maybe the sound more than the face, Harlan says. Memory works that way. Elena watches the flame dance. When this ends, I'll take him to Texas. Start again. Harlan nods. He'll need that. She looks up. And you? He stares into the rain. I'll finish what started. Thunder cracks overhead. Water runs down the rock in narrow streams. Harlan tosses another stick on the fire, though it hisses in protest. Ransom won't quit, he says. He's the kind of man who calls the devil a partner. Then we take his hand away, Elena answers. The storm rages another hour before easing. When they step out, the air feels scrubbed clean, the world bright again. Harlan points south. Trails clearer now. Fort Sill by tomorrow. They ride until dusk paints the plains gold. Coyotes call far off. The road ahead rises toward the shadowed ridge of the Wichita Mountains, where Fort Sill crouches between stone and wind. Harlan glances back once more at the storm fading behind them. He'll follow that smoke, he says. He'll think we're dead. Elena adjusts the blanket around Mateo. Then let him chase ghosts until he finds the wrong one. As night falls, they make camp near a stream, the moon bright enough to paint their faces silver. Mateo sleeps first. Harlan cleans his rifle by firelight, the rhythm slow, careful. Elena watches him a long time before saying, "Thank you." He doesn't look up. For what? For not asking me to forgive him yet. Harlan meets her eyes across the flames. You don't owe him that. You owe yourself tomorrow. The fire pops, throwing sparks into the night. Somewhere beyond the ridge, thunder murmurs one last time before the sky goes still. They reach the Red River at twilight, the sky cracked open with firelight from the setting sun. The water runs wide and slow, red as clay. South Bank, Indian Territory. Beyond that, wilderness. The last word before the edge of law. Harlan Pike halts the mare at the bluff. That's where Ransom runs his crossing, he says. Down below, 3 wagons are moored beside a half-built flatboat ferry, lanterns swinging in the wind. Men move like shadows around a tin-roofed shack. His supply post, Harlan adds. Elena squints. You think he's there? He will be. Ransom likes to count his silver in person. They dismount under the cottonwoods, tying the horses deep in brush. Mateo stays bundled in a blanket between them. The boy stirs, whispers something soft, and falls back to sleep. Elena kisses his hair, then looks toward the river. We finish this tonight. Harlan checks the Spencer carbine, runs a thumb over the breech, feels the oil cold on his skin. Then we finish it clean. They wait for dark to settle. The air turns thick, the smell of smoke mixing with honeysuckle and rain. Far across the river, a wolf calls once and stops. Harlan crouches beside her. We go for the shack. There'll be papers, money, maybe Ransom himself. Elena nods. And if he's there? Then I speak first. They slide through reeds, knees deep in mud, each step silent under the hum of crickets. A guard paces near the ferry rope, a long coat brushing his boots. Harlan waits until the man turns, then moves quick, a flash of arm and the quiet thud of a rifle butt. The man drops without sound. Inside the shack, lamplight spills across crates and ledgers. Two men sit at a table, one writing, the other counting coins into a bag. Neither looks up until the door swings. Harlan steps in first, rifle low. Elena follows, face calm, eyes fixed. Hands where I can see them, Harlan says. The men freeze. The younger one stammers. We ain't done nothing wrong. Elena cuts him short. Where's Ransom? He rode for Fort Sill this morning, the man blurts. Said he'd be back by dawn. Harlan moves closer. Then you write him a note. Tell him his past is catching up. He grabs the ledger from the table. The pages show names, dates, payouts. Same scrawl as before, Ransom's signature bold and careless. Enough proof to bury him. Outside, thunder mutters far away. Harlan looks toward the ferry. We burn the supplies. They can walk home. Elena pulls a lantern from the hook, smashes it against a crate. Flames leap up hungry. She looks at the men. If you run now, maybe you live. They do, scattering into the dark. The fire takes quick. Tar barrels hiss and pop. Harlan and Elena sprint for the riverbank. Behind them, the shack becomes a torch. The reflection dances across the red water. A shout rises from the far side, more men running toward the blaze. Time to go, Harlan says. They cut the ferry loose and shove off into the current. The flatboat swings wide, half-burning debris floating past like fireflies. Elena rose, teeth clenched, the ledger strapped tight to her waist. Gunfire flashes from the shore. Bullets skip across the water like stones. Harlan fires once in return, then again, keeping their heads down. The river pulls them faster, the current turning fierce near the bend. When they reach the far bank, the fire behind them roars higher, painting the night blood red. Harlan pulls the boat aground, grabs the horses waiting in the brush, and turns north along the river trail. Elena looks back once at the burning shack. That's for him, she says. For all of it. Harlan nods. And it's only the start. The trail north follows the Red River for 10 miles before cutting inland toward Fort Sill. The storm has passed, leaving the night bright and sharp. The moon lights the wet grass in silver rose. Harlan rides ahead, scanning the ridgeline. The ferry post behind them still burns, a pillar of smoke rising straight into the stars. He'll see that from Sill, he says. He'll know we're coming. Elena grips the reins tight. Let him. They ride in silence until the sound of hooves joins the wind, steady, distant, closing. Harlan stops the mare and listens. 4 riders, maybe 5. His men again? Not this time. He points toward a faint glow eastward. Army patrol. Fort scouts. They wait until shapes emerge from the trees. 2 cavalrymen, sabers at their sides, lantern hanging from the lead horse. The officer raises a hand. Identify yourselves. Harlan rides forward slow, palms up. Name's Pike, former 3rd Missouri. We're bound for Fort Sill with evidence against a man running freight out of Kansas. Name's Ransom. The officer narrows his eyes. I've heard the name. You have proof? Harlan taps his coat. Enough to hang a sheriff and the man who bought him. The officer studies them a beat, then nods. Ride with us. The post commander will want your story. They reach Fort Sill before dawn. The stockade looms from the mist, lamps glowing through drizzle. Soldiers move along the walls, boots echoing on plank walks. Inside the gate, the officer leads them to a long, low building smelling of ink and oil. A major sits behind a desk, gray mustache, eyes sharp as pins. "You Pike?" "Yes, sir." "You bring me trouble?" Harlan drops the ledger on the table. "Proof." The major flips pages, eyebrows rising as he reads names: Ransom, Hargrove, half a dozen freight agents and lawmen. "You know what this means?" he says. "If this is real, it reaches past one county, maybe 2 states." "It's real," Harlan says. Elena steps forward. "And if you don't stop him, he'll keep taking children to make their parents sign their land away." The major looks at her a long moment, then nods. "You've done enough for one night. There's quarters in the North Barracks. We'll wire Fort Smith at first light." Harlan nods. "Appreciate it, sir." They step out into the pale dawn. Rain drips from the eaves. For the first time in weeks, the air smells clean. Inside the barracks, Mateo sleeps between them on a straw mattress, safe under army roof. Elena brushes his hair from his face and whispers, "He doesn't dream bad anymore." Harlan sits by the window, rifle across his knees, watching the first color bleed into the sky. He will when the world remembers what happened. That ledger means more killing before peace comes. She looks over. "You think peace ever stays?" He shrugs. "Not for men like him. Maybe for you." Outside, bugles cry across the fort. Soldiers line up for morning roll. Beyond the walls, smoke from the burned ferry still stains the horizon. Elena stands beside him, eyes on the east. "He'll come for it," she says. "I'm counting on it," Harlan answers. The sun climbs slow, lighting the wet earth gold. For a heartbeat, the world feels quiet, balanced on the edge between justice and blood. Then the gates of Fort Sill creak open, and the road ahead calls them again.
By the second morning at Fort Sill, the rain has dried to dust. Soldiers drill in the yard while the smell of coffee and gun oil hangs in the air. Harlan Pike stands near the gate with his coat buttoned high and the ledger under his arm. Elena stays close. Mateo perched on a fence rail, watching cavalry horses trot in circles. For a moment, it almost looks like peace. Then the telegraph clicks. A runner from headquarters hurries out, a folded slip in hand. "Message from Fort Smith, sir." He calls. The officer takes it, reads fast, and his face shifts. Marshal Harper's men are delayed. No escort before 3 days. Harlan feels it before the words come. 3 days. Yes. They're tracking bandits near the Arkansas line. You'll have to hold until they arrive. Elena meets his eyes. He won't give us 3 days. Harlan nods once, then we won't wait for him to knock. That night, the air thickens with the kind of quiet that hides bad news. A wagon limps into the fort courtyard just after sundown. One wheel broken, the driver wrapped in bandages. He babbles about being ambushed on the North Trail, about men wearing army coats who rode under Ransom's brand. The soldiers check the coats. Stolen issue. They're framing us. Harlan says, "Those men will hit the next town and swear I led them." The major swears low. If that ledger vanishes, Washington will call it rumor. Harlan looks to Elena. "We move tonight." She glances toward Mateo, asleep under a thin blanket. "How far?" "Until the truth has ears." Fort Smith. We reach the marshals before his story does. They gather what little they have food, spare rounds, 2 canteens, and the ledger wrapped in oilcloth. The guard at the east gate gives them a long look but says nothing. By the time the moon lifts, they're already riding hard across the flats. The prairie feels wrong, too quiet. Even the insects have gone still. Somewhere ahead, a coyote barks once and cuts off. At the Cache Creek crossing, Harlan spots the trap, horses waiting in the dark. He yanks the reins and shouts. Down gunfire tears the night open. Muzzle flashes bloom along the ridge. Bullets hiss through the grass. Harlan rolls from the saddle, firing back blind. Elena crawls behind a fallen log, shielding Mateo with her body. He calls out, voice rough over the gunfire. Ransom's wasting good men for one book. A voice answers from the dark low, almost friendly. Not for the book, Pike, for the story that comes with it. Harlan fires toward the sound, sparks flaring off rock. When the echo dies, only the smell of powder remains. They crawl through the brush, leading the horses by the bit. Every few yards, another shot splits the dark, closer each time. Finally, they reach the riverbank, water black and fast. Elena looks at him. We can't cross in this light. Then we don't cross. He says, we hide under it. He shoves the horses into the reeds, pulls the ledger from his coat, and stuffs it inside a hollow log by the bank. If we don't make it, this will... She grabs his wrist. Don't talk like that. He almost smiles. It's not talk. It's habit. They crouch under the slope, water lapping at their boots, the night alive with the hum of mosquitoes and distant gunmen combing the ridges. The ledger sleeps 10 feet away, safe for now. When the first light edges the sky, the riders are gone. The world smells of wet ash and river mud. Harlan touches his shoulder where a bullet creased the skin, feels warm blood. Elena wraps it quick, face pale but steady. We're ghosts to them now, she says. He nods. Let's make it last. They move east with the sunrise, keeping the river on their right. The air turns dry again, the storm washed clean from the sky. Mateo rides in front of Elena, his eyes wide but quiet, small hands gripping the horn of the saddle. Every few miles, they pass signs of the ambushed spent shells, a dead horse, a torn saddlebag half buried in mud. Ransom's men are sweeping ahead, leaving bait for whoever chases. Harlan knows the pattern. He's not just hunting us, he says. He's setting the tail. When they find this mess, they'll think we made it. Elena tightens her jaw. Then we give them another story. By noon, they reach an old mission post, a shell of stone walls and a roof half caved in. Inside, dust and pigeons. Harlan makes a small fire in a broken hearth and warms the last of their beans. Elena checks the ledger again, tracing Ransom's name like a scar. If we fall, she says, someone has to find this. They will, Harlan answers. Hollis will see the fire at Red River, know what it means. He'll send the wire to Fort Smith. Mateo plays with a tin cup, tapping it on the floor. The sound echoes like a heartbeat. Harlan crouches beside him. You did good back there, he says softly, held quiet. That's brave. The boy nods, shy, not quite understanding, but smiling anyway. Outside, the wind rises again. From the doorway, Harlan sees dust curling far off. Riders, the frame tightening. They're not quitting, he mutters. Elena slings the rifle over her shoulder. Then neither do we. They ride out the back trail, following a wagon rut that leads into low hills. The land turns broken, ridges of red shale and scrub oak twisting like ribs. Toward dusk, they spot a stage station abandoned, one door hanging loose. Harlan dismounts, checks the place, and finds a telegraph line still running along the roof beam, wire humming faint. Could send a message, he says. To who? Fort Smith. Hollis? Anyone with a badge and a conscience. He takes the key from the table, taps slow. Ledger safe. Ransom riding east. Need extraction. Pike. The line clicks, faint but alive. No answer comes, but he keeps tapping until his fingers ache. Elena sets Mateo by the wall, then stands watch at the door. When she turns back, she sees the exhaustion in Harlan's shoulders, the blood soaking his sleeve again. You need rest. He shakes his head. Rest comes after the rope. The words barely fade before a shot punches through the window. The lamp shatters. Harlan drops flat, dragging her down. Voices outside. Close. Ransom's men again. He grabs the ledger, shoves it into Elena's hands. Take him. Go through the creek bed. I'll slow them. No, she says. We stay together. Now, he snaps, eyes sharp. You promised him tomorrow. For a second. Her face breaks, then hardens again. She kisses Mateo's hair, grabs his hand, and slips through the side door into the dusk. Harlan waits until he hears their footsteps fade, then shoulders the rifle and fires twice through the front. The shouts outside scatter, return, and scatter again. When his cartridges run dry, he backs toward the rear window and drops into the creek bed below. He follows their tracks east, boots splashing in shallow water, heart pounding like the telegraph key still echoing in his ears. The last light dies behind the ridge. Somewhere ahead, the sound of a hoarse snort and a soft voice, Elena, calling his name. He exhales, half relief, half warning. "We're not done yet," he says. The wind carries the words away toward Fort Smith, where justice waits with a pen and a noose. They reach Turkey Creek by mid-morning, the air sharp and dry after 3 days without rain. The water winds slow through cottonwoods, shallow enough to see the pebbles glitter beneath. Harlan Pike rides ahead, checking the ground for prints. The mud shows horse tracks leading east, 6, maybe 7, fresh enough to shine. "They're close," he says. Elena nods, tightening the blanket around Mateo. "Then this ends here." They stop beneath the trees and rest the horses. Harlan cleans the Spencer, reloads each round with careful hands. The bandage on his arm seeps dark, but he ignores it. "He'll want to fight," he says. "He'll make it look like justice when it's just revenge." Elena glances at the ledger strapped to her side. "We show the truth before he buries it." Harlan studies her, seeing the steadiness that wasn't there weeks ago. "You ready to kill him?" She doesn't blink. "I've been ready since he touched my boy." They cross the creek at noon. The sky burns white, the plains breathing heat. In the distance, a line of wagons crawls toward the bluffs, Ransom's freight train. At its head rides a man in a black coat, shoulders square, hat brim low, Caleb Ransom, alive and confident as sin. Harlan pulls the mare behind a ridge. "We'll come from the north." Split his eyes between us. Elena dismounts. "No, we draw him out." He frowns. How she steps into the open, walking steady down the slope, one hand raised. The wind tugs her hair loose. Ransom's men shout, rifles lift. The black-coated man raises a hand and they lower them. He rides forward alone. "Elena," he calls, voice smooth as oil. "Didn't think you had the gall to show your face." She stops 10 paces short. "You took everything I had. I took what was owed, the land, the stock, the peace. You and that brat were just collateral." Her jaw tightens. "Then I'll take it back in blood." Behind the ridge, Harlan moves into position, rifle sight glinting in the sun. He draws a bead on Ransom's chest, finger resting light on the trigger. But something in the man's smirk freezes him. The faint shimmer of glass at Ransom's saddle horn, a mirror signal. Ambush. Harlan mutters. He fires anyway. The shot knocks Ransom sideways in the saddle, not dead but bleeding. The air erupts gunfire from the trees, dust exploding around Elena's feet. She dives for cover as Harlan charges down the hill, firing from the hip. Mateo screams from behind the rocks. The first 2 riders fall before they reach the creek. The rest spread wide, circling. Elena grabs her Colt and fires twice, her face set hard. Ransom hauls himself upright, blood down his sleeve, shouting for his men to push forward. Harlan reaches the wagon line, grabs a fallen guard's rifle, and fires through the smoke. The sound rolls across the valley like thunder. One man drops, another flees. Ransom wheels his horse toward the ridge. Harlan's voice cuts through the dust. "You run again. I'll shoot you in the back this time." Ransom turns, gun drawn. "You already did, soldier." They stare at each other through the haze, 2 relics of a war that never ended. The next shot comes almost together. 2 flashes, 1 sound. Harlan's bullet finds Ransom's chest. Ransom's round grazes Harlan's ribs and spins him to the ground. The world goes quiet except for the ringing in his ears and the slow collapse of the black-coated man into the dust. Elena runs to Harlan, drops to her knees. "You all right?" He breathes once, hard. "Still here." She glances toward Ransom. The man lies still, his gun half buried in dirt, eyes glassed to the sky. He's not. Smoke drifts over the field, thin and gray. The wagons stand half burned, their tarps riddled with holes. Harlan leans against a wheel, pressing a rag to his side. Elena kneels beside him, reloading her Colt out of habit. Is it over? She asks. He shakes his head. Not till we reach Fort Smith. That ledger's still the rope that'll hang him, even dead. She looks at him. What about you? He smiles, blood on his teeth. I'm too mean to die easy. Mateo runs from the brush, dirt streaked on his cheeks. He clings to his mother's arm, whispering, Mama, no more bad men, no more, she says, holding him tight. They rest until the sun dips low. Then they gather what they can from the wrecked wagon's ammo, food, a map stained with blood. It marks routes south toward Texas and east toward Arkansas. Harlan traces the line with a finger. We take the east road, cross Poteau Creek, then Fort Smith. Elena nods. We'll ride at sundown. They bury Ransom under a lone cottonwood tree. No marker, no prayer, only dirt and the weight of what he'd done. As the last shovelful falls, Harlan mutters, that's all the justice he earned. When they ride out, the sky turns copper. The wind smells of ash and grass. Mateo sleeps in Elena's lap. Lulled by the rhythm of the trail, Harlan rides beside them, his body stiff but steady. At Poteau Crossing, a band of U.S. cavalry waits bluecoats, rifles slung easy. One raises a hand. You pike, Harlan nods. Ledger's in the bag. Ransom's finished. The sergeant waves them through. Marshal Harper's expecting you in Fort Smith. Says he owes you whiskey and a pension you'll never collect. Harlan grins faintly. Story of my life. They follow the patrol east, the river glinting beside them like a strip of glass. When Fort Smith's walls appear at dusk, the world finally exhales. Inside the marshal's office, the ledger lies open on a desk, names inked and damning. Harper signs the affidavit, looks up. You've done what a dozen lawmen couldn't. You'll testify. Harlan glances at Elena. We will, Harper nods. Then I'll see to it the boy gets a roof and a school. The rest, well, the papers'll call it a frontier miracle. Later, as lamps light the streets, they step outside. The town smells of rain and fresh bread, the sound of a fiddle drifting from a saloon. Mateo chases a stray cat across the boardwalk, laughing for the first time in months. Elena leans on the rail, looking out at the Arkansas River. You ever think we'd see peace again? Harlan takes off his hat. Peace is a rented thing, but tonight, it's ours. She turns to him. Then maybe it's time you stop running. He studies her face in the lantern glow, tired, strong, alive. Maybe it's time I learn how. They watch the waters slide past, golden under the moon. The river carries the last ash of the Red River fire, the last echoes of Ransom's men, and maybe the last piece of who they used to be when the wind shifts. Elena says softly, he called you Pike. That wasn't your name before, was it? No. Harlan answers, but it'll do now. She smiles faintly. Then we start again. Mr. Pike. He nods. We start with breakfast and no gunfire. The night folds quiet around them, warm and still. Beyond the walls of Fort Smith, the prairie breathes, wide and forgiving, and somewhere out there, the ghosts finally rest. Fort Smith wakes slow under the smell of rain and bread. The courthouse sits above the river, a stone giant with iron bars for ribs. Inside, the air buzzes with talk traders, soldiers, townsfolk packed shoulder to shoulder for the biggest trial since the war. Harlan Pike stands near the door, hat in hand, coat pressed clean for once. The scar on his ribs burns when he breathes, but he hides it well. Elena sits beside him, Mateo asleep on her lap, a wool shawl around them both. Across the aisle, the jury box gleams like brass in morning light. The bailiff bangs his cane. All rise for Judge Rutherford. The room stills. The judge, a broad man with white hair and cold eyes, takes his seat. Case of the United States versus Sheriff Walter Hargrove and Associates under the employ of one Caleb Ransom. He reads, charges extortion, abduction, and conspiracy to defraud landholders of Indian Territory. The prosecutor, Marshal Harper himself, steps forward. Your Honor, our key witness, Harlan Pike, former captain, 3rd Missouri carries evidence obtained at Red River Crossing. Ledger and signed confession. Hargrove sits at the defense table, wrists chained, face gray. Beside him, 2 freight men whisper fast, eyes darting toward the gallery. Harlan takes the stand, his boots echo on the wood. Harper nods once. State your name for the record. Harlan Pike, he says. You served under General Curtis, I did. Tell the court what you found at the ferry shack. Harlan opens the oilcloth bundle, lays the ledger flat. The pages rustle like old bones. Proof. Every payout ransom made to Sheriff Hargrove. Names, dates, sums. He used children to force families off their land. Signed with this man's hand. He taps the page, and witnessed by Ransom himself. Harper turns the book toward the jury. This, gentlemen, is not rumor, it's handwriting. Hargrove slams a fist on the table. You can't prove I knew about the kidnappings. Elena rises, voice steady as iron. He didn't just know, he watched. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Harper gestures. Let the lady speak. She walks to the stand, one hand resting on Mateo's shoulder. He stood on my porch the day they took my husband, told me to sign away the deed or watch my son vanish. I buried my husband that night. My boy, she falters, breath shaking, was 4 when Ransom bought him like cattle. The judge's gavel cracks once. Enough, ma'am, but her voice cuts through. You asked for truth. There it is. Harper nods. No further questions. Hargrove slumps back, eyes on the floor. The jury stares at the ledger, the ink glinting dark as sin. By noon, the room feels heavier, full of dust and memory. Harper closes his case. The West needs more than bullets to keep its word. It needs men who still remember what one means. The judge leans forward. Verdict. The foreman stands, guilty, on all counts. Cheers rise, muffled by the judge's gavel. Order, he barks. Sentence to be carried out at dawn. Sheriff Hargrove, by the authority of the United States, you are hereby stripped of office and condemned to hang. Harlan exhales slow, the sound more relief than triumph. Elena closes her eyes, Mateo pressing close against her arm. Justice feels strange, heavy like rain on dry ground. Outside, the sky turns clear, the river glints silver. Fort Smith breathes easier for the first time in years. By dusk, the courthouse empties. The sound of hammers drifts from the square where the gallows rise. Soldiers stand guard while townsfolk whisper prayers and gossip in equal measure. Harlan sits on the porch rail of the marshal's office, a cigarette burning slow between his fingers. Harper joins him, handing over a tin of coffee. You did good, he says. Harlan shakes his head. We just dug up what was already rotting. Harper looks toward the river. Still takes guts to dig. Elena steps from the doorway, shawl around her shoulders, the sunset turning her hair to gold. He's right, she says. Not many men would have risked the noose for a stranger. Harlan gives a crooked smile. I was just tired of ghosts. Mateo runs down the steps with a wooden horse someone carved for him. He waves it high. Mama, look, she laughs soft. Real. The sound catches Harlan off guard. He hasn't heard joy that clean since before the war. Harper drains his cup. You'll stay a while. Harlan glances east where the road vanishes toward Arkansas hills. Haven't decided. Elena looks at him. Then decide tomorrow. For once, he nods. Tomorrow sounds fine. That night, the fort sleeps under clear stars. From the barracks yard comes the creak of rope and the murmur of guards. Justice always makes its own kind of lullaby. Harlan stands by the window of the room Harper lent them. Elena lies beside Mateo, both breathing soft. On the table, the ledger sits closed, sealed for transport to Washington. He lights one last cigarette and watches smoke curl through the lamplight. When dawn comes, the crowd gathers at the square. The gallows wait timber dark with dew. Hargrove stands pale, wrists bound, lips moving in a whisper no one can hear. The lever drops. The rope snaps once, and the town exhales. Harlan turns away before the body stops swinging. Elena joins him, hand finding his. It's done, she says. He nods. So what comes next? Life, she answers. They walk to the river as sunlight breaks the horizon. Mateo tosses his wooden horse into the water and watches it drift. "It's going home," he says. "Maybe we all are," Harlan replies. They ride out at noon, 3 figures, one path, no past worth running from. The wind carries dust and the smell of cedar. Somewhere behind them, Fort Smith fades into quiet memory. Elena looks over, eyes bright. "Where to now?" Harlan tips his hat. "Anywhere that isn't burning." She smiles. "Then we've got the whole West." They ride toward the edge of the plains, the road shining like a promise. Above them, the sky opens wide, blue and endless, and for the first time, Harlan Pike doesn't feel hunted. He just feels alive. The road east from Fort Smith bends through hills thick with pine and wild honeysuckle. Spring comes early here. The air smells of sap and smoke. The river's running high from mountain melt. Harlan Pike rides easy for the first time in years, hat tilted back, rifle slung loose. Beside him, Elena hums to keep Mateo awake in the saddle. The boy fights it, eyes half closed, one hand clutching the reins, the other holding a biscuit Harper packed for the road. They follow the Butterfield Trail for half a day before the land opens wide again. The hills fall behind. The grass rises ahead. Harlan reins in and points. "That ridge there. You can see half the territory from the top." Elena smiles faintly. "You know every ridge by heart, just the ones I survived," he says. When they reach the crest, the wind hits full in the face. Below, the plains stretch like a sea, dotted with herds and smoke from distant farms. A single church spire rises near the horizon, a new settlement taking root. Elena dismounts, walking to the edge. "So much land," she whispers. "And we lost so much of it." Harlan joins her. "Then take some back. Start where you stand." She looks at him, eyes softer now. "You think we could build again? A small place? Chickens, maybe a well." He smiles. "If you don't mind fence posts, that lean." They laugh quiet, shared. The sound drifts out over the grass. Mateo runs between them, chasing a yellow butterfly, his laughter echoing off the hill. For a moment, everything else fades: the guns, the blood, the ghosts of men they buried. Only sunlight and wind remain. When the boy slips on a rock, Harlan catches him by the arm. "Easy there, cowboy." "I'm not a cowboy," Mateo says proudly. "I'm a ranger." Harlan chuckles. Even better. They camp that night by the Poteau River, under stars sharp enough to cut. The fire burns low, casting their shadows long on the grass. Elena hums a song from her childhood, a tune soft as water over stone. Harlan listens, cleaning his rifle without hurry. "You ever miss home? I did," she says. "Until I learned home isn't a place, it's people who stay when they don't have to." He nods, quiet. "Then I guess we both found it." The fire pops, sending sparks into the dark. Mateo falls asleep between them, head resting on Harlan's arm. Elena glances at the boy, then at the man beside him. "You never told me your real name," she says. Harlan looks into the flames. Names die with wars. "Pike's enough for the living." She studies him for a long time, then nods. "All right, Pike." He smiles, small and tired. "All right, Elena." The wind carries their voices away toward the far prairie, where the stars hang low and patient. At dawn, the river mist lifts slow. Harlan wakes to the sound of birds and the smell of coffee. Elena stands by the fire, shawl around her shoulders, watching the water move. "Morning," he says. She hands him a tin cup. "We're down to the last grounds." Means we're close to town. They break camp and ride south along the trail. By mid-morning, they pass a wagon train heading north. Families, soldiers, a preacher with a cross tied to his mule. One old man waves his hat. "Where you bound?" Harlan answers. "Where the road's kind." The man laughs. "Then you'll be riding a while." By afternoon, clouds build again, but this time no storm comes, just shade and the smell of rain far away. They stop near a meadow where wild columbine grows thick. Elena picks a handful, ties them to Mateo's saddle horn. "For luck," she says. He grins. "We already got some." They ride until the sun tips west and gold spills across the plains. Harlan slows his horse and looks back. Fort Smith is gone from sight. swallowed by distance. Only the faint line of smoke remains. Elena rides up beside him. What are you thinking? That maybe the world still makes room for people like us. She looks ahead, where the land folds into another valley, fresh and green. Then let's see how far it goes. They crest one last hill before dusk. Below lies a clearing with a small stream, a grove of cottonwoods, and a broken fence line half hidden in grass. An old sign leans by the gate, letters faded but still legible, Red Willow Ranch. Elena tilts her head. You think anyone owns it? Not anymore, Harlan says. She dismounts, touches the post, the wood flakes beneath her fingers. It could be home. He nods slowly. Then let's make it one. They lead the horses through the gate, the wind sighing through the trees like an old song remembering itself. Mateo runs ahead to the creek, skipping stones, his laughter chasing the last of the light. Harlan drops his saddle, stretches his back, and looks at Elena. We'll fix the roof first. I'll handle the garden, she says. He smiles. And maybe a porch for quiet nights. She glances up at the darkening sky. For once, I think the west might let us have one. The sun sinks behind the cottonwoods, turning the river red for a heartbeat before fading to silver. Harlan wraps his arm around her shoulders, and together they watch the water carry the light away. Somewhere out there, justice has been done, but here, on this small patch of land, something better is beginning, peace that doesn't need a badge or a bullet. The wind hushes, the night settles, and the stars come out one by one, each one a promise that tomorrow can still be kind. The West was never about who drew faster or who carried the biggest gun. It was about who could keep walking after the dust settled, who could still believe in tomorrow when the world gave them every reason not to. Ayana had her scars. Harlan had his ghosts. The land had its silence. But somewhere between blood and mercy, they found something rarer than gold, peace that didn't need permission, a small ranch by a red willow creek, a porch built not for watching trouble come, but for watching sunset stay. Out here, justice never came easy. Sometimes it rode with a badge. Sometimes it came from a woman who'd lost everything and still refused to bow. Sometimes it looked like a man laying down his rifle because someone finally gave him a reason to stop fighting. So if this story left a mark on you, partner, maybe it's a reminder no matter how far you've run, the road still offers a place to rest, a chance to rebuild, and a reason to keep your heart soft in a hard world. Stay a while, listen to the wind. There's another tale waiting in the dust, and I'll be here to tell it when you come back. Now, pour yourself a cup of coffee, lean back, and tell me what time is it where you are, and where are you listening from. And if this story found you somewhere quiet tonight, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the frontier never truly ends.